What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with my Week 16 top 25 for college basketball. Before we get into it, hit that subscribe button down below to be entered into our giveaway. Dropping from my rankings are Wisconsin and FAU. FAU finally finds themselves out of the rankings after yet another ugly loss. Wisconsin, they've been free falling, and another loss sends them out of my rankings, but it does keep them in my others receiving votes. And then you have teams like Washington State, Florida, they had some really good weeks last week. And then Virginia and BYU just missing the cut. If they can get 2-0 this week, more than likely they'll jump back in. 25 through 21, you have three Mountain West teams. Colorado State is one of those teams that jumps into the rankings. Even after a loss last week, they dismantled Utah State at home, and that's a big win for me because they were ranked. Texas Tech jumping into the rankings as well, destroying Kansas at home, and then losing on the road by 8 to a very good Iowa State. It's tough to win there in the Cyclones building, so I gotta give them their credit. And then Nevada jumps down two spots because they lost a heartbreaker against New Mexico at home, but they did go on the road and get a much needed win. And then that leaves Utah State. They won on the road and then lost at Colorado State. And then the biggest travesty of all, and then the biggest tragedy of all, South Carolina. This team was on fire, and then they just decided to not show up last week. So I had to drop them a lot here. Going on the road and losing to Auburn that many, 40 points is bad. And then losing at home and blowing a double-digit lead is not looking good for them. So they need to turn it around this week in a game at Ole Miss. 20 through 16, you find some more Mountain West teams with New Mexico and San Diego State. New Mexico drops two after their loss to San Diego State, but the win at Nevada. And then San Diego State gets two big wins in the conference to move to 9-4 and lead the conference. And now they get Utah State here on the road, and you can see it's going to be a big game for them. Dayton and St. Mary's took care of business, and even Kentucky as well, winning other games last week. Not too many tough games for Dayton or St. Mary's left in their season as they look to more than likely clinch a spot with the play-in tournament. And then Kentucky getting that win on the road at Auburn is a big win for them, not in just SEC play, but for the resume as well, possibly getting them a top 3, even top 2 seed. And they have Alabama at home this weekend. That is a big game for both of those teams in SEC play. 15 through 11, you have Alabama and then Auburn as well. And yes, Auburn lost to Kentucky, destroyed South Carolina. I'm leaving them at 14 because they did beat Alabama a week ago. And if you can do that, then I think it's privileged that they need to be ahead of Alabama, even though Alabama did win and move up. Creighton, they have a tough game on Tuesday, getting UConn at home. They can win that one. They're in the top 10 for sure. Baylor, another tough game for them. Houston, a top 5 team at home in their building. That'll be a tough game for them. And then Illinois is a team that I think not a lot of people are talking about because the dominance in the Purdue's Big Ten. On the road at Penn State, home against Iowa. 2 winnable games, probably get to 12-4, and more than likely be the 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament. They just find ways to win. And ever since Terrence Shannon has been back after, his problems early in the season, this Illinois team has looked a lot better. 10 through 6, I think any teams in this 10 through 4 area can all be a coin flip and put wherever. And I'm going to start with North Carolina at 10. The loss on the road at Syracuse was a tough one. Didn't expect that, but they did respond well with a home win. And then they go on the road at Virginia this weekend. You saw my Virginia in the just missing out on the top 25. So that's a big game for both of those programs. Kansas, they're falling few here after their loss at Texas Tech was a very ugly one. And I'm staying away from Kansas. I'm jumping off of that bandwagon because this team just doesn't look like they have the consistency to make a run in March. Marquette, I'm high on this team still, even after that ugly loss on the road at UConn. It's tough to go in there and play against UConn as is, but going against the #1 team in the country, it's tough. And I think Marquette was due for a loss as well, but they have 2 easier games this week against bottom tier Big East opponents and should get back on track. Kind of squeaked by both games. I mean, they didn't really dominate, but they were in control. They did get 2 wins to go to 11-3 in conference play. And then they have 2 road games this week, and I wouldn't be surprised if that Miami game or even Wake Forest comes down to the last few possessions. Tennessee, they're moving from 10 to 6, and they just dismantled who they played last week on the road at Arkansas, took care of them by 29. Vanderbilt blew them out 35. Yeah, 35. And Tennessee just finds ways to win games, and they get it done. 5 through 1. Now, this is where I said you can put anybody. I put Iowa State at 5. This team is just climbing, climbing, and climbing, and they're deserving of it. They go on the road, get a huge road win because a lot of people are saying they can't win on the road, and they did that against an okay Cincinnati team. But now this week, tonight actually, they have Houston on the road. If they can upset Houston, then the Cyclones might be jumping from 5 to 2, just like that. Arizona get both Washington schools, Washington State and Washington at home. Washington State will be the tougher game instead of Washington, but they should take care of business. Then Purdue with a shocking upset loss at Ohio State last week on Sunday. It was tough for them, going in there with a new coach and the team looking to really start over and start fresh, and they pulled off the upset. But they should respond well this week with Rutgers and Michigan, two bottom tier teams in the Big Ten. Number 2 is Houston. They get a big win over Texas last week, and that's why they're moving up. And then Iowa State at home at Baylor this weekend. It's a big week for the Cougars. They go 1-1. I don't think you can knock them, but if they go 2-0, they might be pushing for that number 1 spot from UConn. But that's if UConn loses this week at least one game. If they lose to Villanova, more than likely, I'll put Houston up there if Houston wins both. But if they got to beat Creighton first, and Creighton is their probably biggest game I think left on the schedule on the road. So we're going to see what UConn team we're going to get here moving forward. But as of right now, they're the clear-cut favorites to win it all. And that's going to be it for my top 25 rankings. Check back next week to see where these teams rank and if who's jumping in the rankings as well. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.